Arthur and Emma, his wife, didn't have any children. Nobody knows the reason why, but it's almost certain, 99.9% certain, that Arthur had two children with Emma's sister Martha, two daughters, Nora and Minnie. One of those is the mother of Sheila Leeson, and Sheila Leeson is the surviving granddaughter of Arthur Wharton. This was recently, only in the last 20 years, the family, the Leeson family, have discovered this by searching out the birth certificates of the children and seeing that one of them was called Wharton and the other one, there wasn't a registered father, but the child, both Nora and Minnie were olive-skinned, brown-eyed, and it's almost certain they were Arthur's children. Even today, Sheila has grandchildren who have olive skin, brown eyes, broad noses, full lips, that you would say have African, ancestry. So Sheila believes that the two girls, Nora and Minnie, were Arthur's, and I think the family feel that's probably, they're probably correct.
Arthur owned, or was the licence holder of several pubs in his lifetime. Could you just give us a bit of context as to why footballers were given pubs or given licences to pubs, and why that might have been at odds with, for example, the Sheffield United board and the hierarchy there?
Well, up until really the 1960s, footballers often took on pubs, licenseeship of pubs, when they retired, and the connection between the drinks industry and footballers was quite close, really. In the 19th century, many football teams would change at pubs. I mean, vast majority of teams, and that includes professional teams. In the 1880s, when football was beginning to take off as a spectator sport, there weren't grounds with changing rooms. There might be a ground where they played, but the changing rooms would be somewhere else, which was usually a pub next door or nearby. So alongside that, if you read training manuals of the period, there was still this idea that water had no nutrients, anything in it, and it wasn't. There's nothing. The only thing you get from water would be the possibility of cholera, really. Whereas beer, you couldn't catch anything from it, and it had lots of nutrients in it. So a lot of athletes, trainers, used to think it'd be better to drink a pint of beer. It was more healthy for you than to drink a pint of water. So, and as I said, getting changed in pubs. So that there was almost this kind of umbilical link between pubs and sport, and in particular footballers. Now Arthur became a publican of 3 pubs at least that we know of. The Albert Tavern, the Plough Inn, which are both in Rotherham, and the Sportsman's Cottage, which was in Button Lane in Sheffield. And what we think is they were part of the kind of enticement, part of the contract that Arthur signed with the clubs, because the wage of a footballer in the 1880s and 1890s was good for a working class person, but Arthur was quite highly educated and actually could have earned a wage similar to most footballers outside of the game. So to give Arthur a pub as an inducement to sign was not uncommon, really. The problem was it was a disaster in terms of his fitness and his ability and capabilities, because he did like a drink, and as the 1880s and 1890s wore on, in more and more newspaper reports, after certain periods of Arthur's career, when he's going through a bad loss of form, or there's a dispute, contractual dispute with a club, or often they would reduce the wages because they weren't getting people through the gate. It was often said that Arthur was indisposed, and which I think is just another word. He turned up to the game drunk, basically, And there is actually reports of him playing games where the reporter all but says that Arthur was pissed today. He was drunk. He was useless. It just, the language of the time, they'd often, with this kind of Victorian morality that kind of overlay everything, they'd used subtext, they'd infer that he'd had a drink, and by using the word indisposed, or he wasn't his usual capable self, and this kind of thing. So, yeah, he I think it did affect his career, drinking. The fact that Arthur liked to drink and he had a likeness for women, that doesn't sit well with his kind of Methodist background. That's certainly true, and I think that he had this odd relationship with his family in the Gold Coast, in that the more exalted and kind of well known he became in Britain, and the further away he got from his the original objective and reason for sending him to Britain was to become a Wesleyan Methodist preacher, and that's why he was at Wesleyan colleges. The further the better he became, and the more professional he became as a sportsman, the further he distanced himself from those original objectives. So there was friction. There was a kind of, a kind of, a clash of values really between what his parents or what his mother wanted him to do. His father was dead; he died in 1872. But his maternal uncle, his mother's brother, F.C. Grant, who funded his education in Britain. What the family in the Gold Coast wanted him to do, and what he was actually doing in Britain, and which was not leading the life of a devout Methodist, which is one of the reasons Arthur never went back and settled in the Gold Coast, really, because I think sport in Britain and the fact that he could earn money from it gave him independence, whereas he relied on his family back in the Gold Coast as a student to fund his education, to pay for his lodgings, his food, etc. Whereas winning races and playing professional football allowed him to become independent. The problem was it took him further away from what his family wanted him to do, really.